The alert comes at 2:17 a.m. Not a phone call, not an email, a single line of red text on a monitor that was supposed to show nothing but green. You stare at it for 3 seconds. Then you pick up the encrypted handset on your desk, the one with no carrier logo, no serial number visible, registered to a shell entity you've never been able to fully trace, and you make the call you were told to make only if something was seriously wrong. It rings twice. He picks up on the second ring. You didn't find this job found you. 18 months earlier, you were finishing a postdoctoral fellowship in applied cryptography at a research institution that you signed a paperwork agreeing never to name in connection with your subsequent employment. Your work was on post-quantum encryption architecture, specifically building systems resilient to decryption methods that don't exist yet but will. You published 2 papers under a pseudonym. You presented at one conference once under the same name. Someone in that conference room was not there for the conference. 3 weeks later, you received an invitation with no letterhead, routed through 3 separate legal entities, asking whether you were interested in a private consulting arrangement. The compensation figure was written in a font that looked calm and reasonable, as though numbers that size were ordinary. The NDA was 47 pages. You had a lawyer review it. The lawyer said she'd never seen language quite like it. She strongly advised you not to sign. You signed. The job title internally is something neutral: Systems Integrity Specialist. But what you actually do is this: you build and maintain the encryption infrastructure, protecting communications, financial transactions, and operational data for a private technology organization whose footprint spans 6 industries and 4 continents. You are functionally the person who builds the locks on the doors that no one is supposed to know exist. The rules are explained during onboarding by a man who speaks in the measured cadence of someone who has delivered this briefing many times and finds nothing casual about it. No cloud storage. Ever. Local servers only, air-gapped where designated. All communications routed through proprietary encrypted channels. Your personal devices are replaced on a 60-day cycle. You do not discuss your work with anyone, not partners, not family, not other employees you happen to meet in the hallway. If someone asks where you work, you have a cover answer prepared. You have practiced it until it sounds like the truth. You learn the scale of what you're protecting gradually. The way you learn about the depth of a body of water by how long it takes to touch the bottom. There are encryption keys in your custody that, if compromised, could expose the architectural plans for hardware that hasn't been publicly announced. Communication logs between executives, governments, and regulatory bodies in 3 countries. Financial routing structures for transactions so large that their exposure could move markets before breakfast. You are 6 months into the job before you fully understand what you're holding. The understanding, when it arrives, is not comfortable. You learn his patterns the way you learn weather. Indirectly. Through the data you protect rather than through any direct contact. In 11 months, you speak to him twice. The first time is a 30-second video call where he asks one technical question, receives your answer, nods, and disconnects. The second time is the 3:47 a.m. call. Between those 2 conversations, you build systems that run continuously beneath every public-facing thing he does. When he posts, there are encrypted logs of the drafts that weren't posted. When his companies make announcements, the internal communications that preceded them by weeks have already passed through infrastructure you designed. You know the shape of decisions before the world knows the decisions exist. You don't read the content. That's not your job. Your job is to make sure no one else reads it either. The breach notification comes from a monitoring daemon you wrote yourself, running on a server physically located in a building you visited once. You understand what you're looking at within 45 seconds. Someone is inside the outer authentication layer. Not a brute force attempt. Those get stopped automatically, and you never even see them. This is something more deliberate. Someone has a valid credential, not a stolen password. A credential that was either issued legitimately or constructed with knowledge of the issuance architecture itself. That second possibility sits in your chest like something cold, because the only people who know the issuance architecture are the people who built it. There are 4 of them. You are one. You don't say any of that on the 3:47 a.m. call. You say, we have an active intrusion event at authentication layer 2. You say, I'm isolating the affected node. You say, I'll have a full picture within the hour. He asks one question, not about the data, not about the source. He asks, how long have they been in? You tell him the truth. You don't know yet. The line goes quiet for 4 seconds. Then, find out. The call ends. You work through the night with the kind of focus that exists on the other side of fear. Past the adrenaline, past the catastrophizing, into the cold mechanical place where the problem is the only thing. You pull logs. You trace the credential's activity path backward through 7 nodes. You map every query it ran, every directory it touched, every file it lingered on for longer than a standard system process would require. Someone was looking for something specific. They knew the folder structure. They knew which directories to skip and which ones to examine. They moved through the system the way a person moves through a house they've been inside before. Not opening every door, just the right ones. By 5:30 a.m., you have isolated the node. By 6:15, you have a partial map of what was accessed. By 7, you are sitting with information that you cannot unknow, looking at a pattern in the access logs that points, with terrible specificity, toward a direction you don't want to look. The credential used to enter the system was issued 8 months ago. You issued it. There are 3 possibilities, and you cycle through them methodically because cycling through them is better than accepting any one of them. The first, your credential issuance was observed somehow. The architecture reverse-engineered by an external actor sophisticated enough to replicate it. Possible. Difficult. It would require capabilities that only a small number of state-level actors possess. The second, someone on the internal team used their own legitimate access to disguise their intrusion behind a trail that points toward you. Possible. It would require detailed knowledge of your specific protocols, your issuance patterns, your logging behavior. The third possibility is the one you keep returning to and keep refusing to land on. That somewhere in the last 8 months, in a moment you cannot identify, your own access was used without your knowledge. You write the preliminary report. You send it through the encrypted channel. You do not include your working theory about the credential because a working theory is not evidence. And evidence is the only language this organization speaks. By 9 a.m., you are sitting in a room with 2 people you have never met who introduce themselves without last names and ask you questions in the careful, methodical way of people who have already formed a hypothesis and are now testing whether your answers confirm it. They ask about the credential. You answer precisely. You tell them what you know and only what you know. You do not speculate out loud. You are aware, with the particular awareness of someone who builds security systems for a living, that everything said in this room is being logged. The meeting lasts 90 minutes. When it ends, one of the 2 people without last names tells you to remain available and not to discuss this with anyone. You walk back to your workstation. The monitor still shows 1 red line against the green. The job was never about him, not really. It was always about the weight of what you were holding, the architecture beneath the architecture, the locks behind the locks. You built systems designed to be invisible, infrastructure that only becomes visible when it fails. It has failed. And now you are sitting inside the breach you were hired to prevent, in a room full of logs that gesture towards you, waiting to find out whether you are the person investigating the problem or the problem itself. You open the access logs one more time. You start from the beginning, because the most important thing you will do today is also the thing that will determine whether anyone ever trusts you again. That you find the answer, and that when you find it, it is true.